Welcome, everyone. As you join in, my name is Martha Van Berkel, and I am the CEO here at Schema App, and I'm pumped to welcome you. We have about 1 minute till go time. Thought we'd just get started, make sure everyone was ready. You're thinking up those great questions that you have for our super smart panel. And more importantly, you're maybe dreaming, spending some time and wonder on, what is that possibility between schema markup and AI search. So we'll get ready. We'll start right at the top of the hour. So in about 120 seconds, 2 minutes, we're on the countdown. So welcome. If you want to put in the chat, there's a chat on the right hand side. Maybe tell us where you're joining us from. We'd love to hear sort of either how you heard from us or where you're joining from. All right, we see the US represented. I see Chicago and San Diego, Arkansas, Indianapolis, North Texas, Illinois. Man, we got some Winnipeggers, someone from Ottawa representing the Canadians. I see someone from Amsterdam, Netherlands. We see someone from Serbia. Welcome. Thailand, Berlin. Wow, we're getting that global reach today. London, Scotland. Oh, I have all kinds of stories of all these wonderful places that I visited or I've lived. Oh, someone local, Toronto, great welcome. Brazil, Philippines, so glad to see you, Tiago and Mika. We're super jazzed about today's topic. And, this is going to be a power lunch. Maybe that's what we should have called it. 30 minutes of, I'll say, stimulating conversations and questions. We're going to take you on that journey with us, sort of defining specific terms so you can really leave with new understanding of some of this area around schema markup and knowledge graphs. We are jazzed. So we're at 12:01. That's why I said 2 minutes and we're going to rock and roll. Again, let's get started. So, welcome everybody. As you can see in the chat, if you want to share where you're joining us from, we'd love for you to share that. My name is Martha Van Berkel. I am one of the co-founders and CEO here at Schema App, and you can probably tell from the energy in my voice that I am excited. This is a really, really fun conversation that we're going to have today about schema markup and AI. And I'm just kind of blown away by the fact that I'm joined by this really esteemed panel. And so let's go ahead and talk about who they are and what we're going to talk about today. So we're going to go through introductions. We're then going to have the first theme around generative AI. So, ChatGPT, all those chatbots, that's where we're going to start. And then we'll shift gears and talk about AI and knowledge graphs. And then we'll wrap up in time for you to ask all those burning questions. And so, like I said, I have an esteemed panel with me. I am honored today to just be the moderator. And as I said, my name is Martha Van Berkel. I'm the CEO and co-founder here at Schema App. And what would be more fitting than for us to introduce ourselves with a knowledge graph? So the first person I'd like to welcome is Jesse Meece, who is the Director of Web Strategy at Advent Health. Jesse, welcome. Tell us a little bit about yourself and Advent Health.
Thanks, Martha. I appreciate that introduction. First, let me say Advent Health is guided by its mission of extending the healing ministry of Christ, which is expressed through our whole person care delivered across our operations and facilities. Our service standards, informed by our patients, bring our mission and values to life for our team members, patients, and communities. These practices include keeping people safe, showing them love, making healthcare as easy as possible, and to own their journey with them. Guided by the principle that people are more than their diagnosis, our care for body, mind, and spirit is what guides our vision to become a preeminent, faith-based, consumer-focused clinical care company helping those we serve to feel whole. Today, Advent Health spans 51 hospitals across 9 states and a robust network of outpatient clinics and post-acute care sites. Together, 83,000 team members and more than 2,600 employed physicians help us deliver care to over 7 million patients annually, both in person and digitally. I recently took on the role of director of the web marketing team, but for the past several years now, we've been very fortunate to partner with you all at Schema App to ensure our web properties are well structured so that consumers can find exactly what they need. Schema App has been an absolute front runner in that regard.
Amazing. We're super excited to have you here, really representing, our customer and representing someone, who is that leading that web team, trying to figure out sort of how these things all work together. Next, I'd like to introduce the esteemed Dr. Iram Fatima, who is our lead data scientist here at Schema App. Iram, tell us a bit about yourself.
Thank you, Martha. Hello, everyone. My name is Iram Fatima. I'm a data scientist at Schema App. I have a PhD degree in computer engineering, mainly focused on intelligent computing, data mining, and machine learning. I'm enthusiastic about data science, especially considering how quickly the technology is changing and enabling us to drive more meaningful insights. I always enjoy being part of new technologies, trying out innovative solutions. At Schema App, I deal with a wide range of data that belong from knowledge graph to web page content. I mainly work on data insights to drive strategy, apply NLP and machine learning to predict and classify tasks related to schema markup and structured data. This helps us to build and optimize engineering solutions to scale.
So glad to have you here and kind of help us kind of through this journey of learning as well that we're going to go through today. So last but not least, I'd like to introduce my partner in crime, also a co-founder and head of product here at Schema App, Mark Van Berkel.
Hi, yeah, thanks everyone. Thanks, Martha. So just as a background, I'm also a founder at Schema App and head of product and co-founder. And I come at this from the knowledge representation side of things. So the semantic technology, the reasoning and ontologies and the logical inferences. This is kind of my background. And within the business, I wrote the first version of the software. So I'm kind of a software developer and interested in the architecture but continuing to learn and for us continuing to learn is applying some of the kind of novel technologies with Iram in machine learning, using some of the large language models and putting to work like some of the different algorithms for our clients like Jesse. And I'm a ChatGPT enthusiast. I have had fun tinkering and testing capabilities with Schema Markup and yeah, excited to be here today.
All right. So now that we've gauged that, like all the esteemed panel is going to educate me as well as all of you, I want to take us on that first step in our journey. So we said we were talking about schema markup as well as AI. And so just to make sure all of our audience for all around the world understands like, well, what is schema markup? What do we really mean by that? Some of you may know it as the term structured data, since that is sort of how Google terms it. But I just want to take a minute to kind of walk us through that definition. And so schema markup is actual code that goes on the web page that the search engines understand. And it really helps them understand the content on the page as well as how it's connected to everyone else. And the reason we use that knowledge graph to introduce ourselves is because we're explaining how we're connected, right? Same thing that structured data and schema markup is actually doing, on your page and within your content. And we always love to share like the outcome of that work that we're doing is really those beautiful rich results. And so often people customers or are really trying to stand out in search and get that visible change measured with clicks. And that's really the output that today I would say is the primary value proposition as to why people do schema markup. All right, so now that we're all on the same page, that's schema markup. There's lots of code. We other great webinars that kind of talking. I want to now shift gears and talk about the other half, right? So we're talking about schema markup and AI. And so as many of you know, like there's been a lot of buzz. I joke that my mother has even asked like what's ChatGPT and needed a demo so she could understand what all this news and everything was talking about. And so I thought I'd start Iram by asking you as a data scientist, can you describe generative AI for us? And is it new?
Um, if we talk about generative AI, it's just like a category of specific AI algorithms that can generate new output based on the data they have been trained on. We're talking about the history of large language model. We can trace it back to 1960s when the first chatbot Eliza was developed at MIT to respond to users' query in a way that seemed natural and conversational. over the next few decades, the field of AI continue to evolve and advance, with researchers developing more sophisticated language models that can handle more complex tasks. When we talk about the latest or recent developments, such as ChatGPT by OpenAI and Bard by Google, these are capable to understand human natural language with the ability to answer follow-up questions, admit their mistakes, and also reject some inappropriate requests. So overall, if we consider this field is still evolving, and it's very exciting and interesting to know and see how the community will bring the reproducibility and trustability factor into this process.
Okay. Thank you, Iram. So with that said, Jesse, I'm going to go to you first and ask, like, as a leader in both web and healthcare, like, tell me how you're thinking about generative AI and its role in your customer journey.
Yeah. So with the advent of AI, I think we have a real opportunity to enrich the journey for our patients and communities at Advent Health, and to do so with tremendous responsibility and care. Many healthcare providers are looking to AI to remove friction for consumers who may be seeking out answers to their questions that could come in the form of a more intelligent chatbot experience. As Iram mentioned, AI has tremendous potential to bolster content in the form of both written and digital formats. So whether it's digital assets, AI generated video, or anything related to a more, we'll say, immersive experience, AI certainly has a role to play in healthcare. There's no question. We have to responsibly look at every option for the benefit of our consumers.
And how are you seeing like the customer journey or schema markup process evolving with generative AI?
Yeah, good question. I think in short, I believe it has potential to dramatically shorten the consumer funnel, right? In the space of where zero-click results currently resides, we may see an opportunity for AI to bring sought-after information or calls to action or directly to consumers. I can imagine adoption of AI across many industries, of course, leading to much shorter consumer journeys, essentially immediate conversions. An example in healthcare might be immediate booking of appointments. For generative AI in healthcare, my hope is that personalized content helps consumers more easily find the services, providers, and treatment options that they need.
Oh, wow. So you're talking about like that whole piece of like where I would say like over the last couple of years, everyone was like, oh my goodness, zero click searches to where like, even further like immediate answer, right? Immediate almost conversion. And I was listening to this great podcast where they're saying, what's different about it, like this change is the fact that like it can be integrated in everything. Yeah, just very disruptive, right? I think we don't know yet sort of how that's all going to look. Um, Now, Mark, I'm going to hand it over to you because, generative AI, I know you've been exploring sort of like how it plays a role specifically in the schema markup process. And the schema markup process at Schema App, we define as like starting with strategy, right? Understanding like what you want to optimize and what that outcome you want, how you author it by generating the JSON LD, deploy it to get it on the site, and then maintain it as there's, I'll say, change everywhere. And then make sure that we're also measuring the result because that's then informed strategy. So can you speak a little bit, Mark, about how you're thinking about how generative AI is going to evolve this process?
Yeah, I think it can touch on quite a bit of these steps and these jobs to be done. And if I were to start with authoring, that's kind of what we're doing to get I put JSON LD, but the schema markup. And in my testing, it looks like the best generative models can do quite a majority of the heavy lifting of creating and generating schema markup. So you can kind of feed in the content from a web page, and then it can actually pick out the different things. And the OpenAI's ChatGPT version 4 is actually quite capable and understands the schema vocabulary. So you can actually get quite a decent response and some of some of the objects and taxonomy that you would expect from it. Now, it doesn't really understand everything, but it does a pretty good job of kind of getting you going. And so you still need humans in the loop to kind of modify and maybe shape and mold the schema markup, because it also doesn't really understand Google's requirements. So when you do have a response, you get a pretty good response, and so we still want to have someone doing some of the work in the authoring, kind of overseeing and kind of accepting the recommendations that we'll be bringing into the product and into your process. So these are our process, but this is what everyone kind of goes through. On the deployment side, traditionally we're talking about this getting JSON-LD onto the website. There's another opportunity to kind of help with this, to help with this kind of the shorter funnels to distribute and deploy this markup also to other endpoints or consumers for chatbots. You would want to get on your website, but you can also deploy that to other kind of consumers in the enterprise. And so for us, it's interesting that it won't simplify that necessarily, but it has a role to play to be able to push some of that data into those kinds of interfaces. On maintenance, what happens is you're often, the markup might be created at a point in time, but we want to kind of keep an eye on the things that have changed. So you can still use generative AI to suggest extensions to schema markup to better reflect what's in the content. You could even use it to maybe help to identify things that are maybe in schema markup that are not in the content. And so how do you actually update the content and go the other direction as well? And then lastly is really there's an input into this strategy. So how are we determining types and the properties of the schema markup? And this is the strategy. This is like the hardest problem to solve. And so I'm actually going to ask Iram to share some of the work that she's been doing at Schema App and using AI for page classification and in the strategy.
At Schema, we have performed multiple experiments for auto schema generation using AI and machine learning algorithms. The main contributor that decides which approach is better than other is the accuracy metric of the algorithm. So we tried a zero-shot classification where training is not a requirement, and we identified it's a very diverse and scalable solution and can handle a wide range of schema classes with a reasonable accuracy. On the other hand, when we repeated the experiment with a large language model with custom training, we got significantly better accuracy in comparison to zero-shot approach with the need of separate training for each schema class. So in addition to these approaches, we also experimented with ChatGPT to obtain JSON-LD from web page contents, and we observed that ChatGPT performed better in most of the cases, but we are still figuring out the reproducibility factor because we want a consistent result if an experiment is repeated over the period of time before calculating the accuracy metric based on ChatGPT outputs in order to know the usability for a specific use case.
So lots of opportunity for innovation, it sounds like. And with Schema App, like we're thinking about this and we're doing it. So you heard this isn't just pontificating, but Dr. Iram is the one who's digging into this day to day with Mark. We're looking at how are we going to not just innovate but accelerate, right? We like to add agility to your teams. So we sort of talked about like how generative AI we think is going to evolve the schema markup process, how it's also going to evolve the customer journey. Thank you, Jesse. And so now I want to talk a little bit also about the schema markup itself. So I mentioned that it's code, but when you do proper schema markup and it's connected, it actually also builds semantics into it and knowledge graphs. Now to make sure we're all on the same page, I'm just going to take a minute to walk us through some of the terminology and then also how Google and Bing are specifically talking about this. And then we'll talk a little bit about the broader sort of more strategic reason why knowledge graphs are so important. So we're going to start the basics. Mark, as my semantic technologist on the phone, you keep me honest here. So the first one I want to just define is like, what are semantics? And so semantics are really that term of the study of language and how it expresses meaning. And so when we think of language in sort of the topic we're talking about around schema markup, the language of search engines for schema markup is called schema.org. And schema.org is really helping us define things and use properties to explain meaning. And so it really allows us then to use technology like Schema App that's semantic technology. And so semantic technology is really tools that help you articulate that meaning. So in Schema App's case, it's semantic technology leveraging the vocabulary of schema.org in order to explain meaning. Okay, Mark, am I still doing okay? I'm on track here? Okay.
Yeah, solid. Keep
Okay, I'm
going.
getting nods. Okay, so then what is a knowledge graph? Well, the knowledge graph is when we bring those relationships together, kind of like how we did our introductory slide. So it's that collection of relationships using that standardized vocabulary. Well, good news, everybody. Guess what? When you do schema markup on your website, you're actually building knowledge graphs for your organization. I'm just pausing here. That's like my drop the mic kind of line, right? And so if schema markup is building knowledge graphs, then we all should be asking, like, so what? Like, how does that then kind of play a role in everything else that we're doing? And so I want to just like before I hand it over to my experts, like I just want to illustrate this to you as to like, what am I really meaning by that whole connected markup? So you have your data on the page, right? That content exists there. And then when you tackle schema markup, you're sort of defining what that page meaning is and things about it. So I might be talking about a product page and all the things about the product, the price, the aggregate rating. I may be talking about a hospital, Jesse, if I'm Advent Health and one of your 51 hospital, and I'm defining all the things about the hospital. And so I'm using a standard language in order to define those things and so they can be understood. But where the power comes, where the insight comes, and what we're going to talk about, like why Martha's super excited and energetic about this, is when you make even broader connections, where you start connecting things across the organization with other things on the web so that we're absolutely clear about the meaning as well as the relationships, the semantics between things. And so why I kind of tie back to search, and schema markup is that recently, there's been questions on like, should I do the hard work to do proper connected schema markup? And originally John Mueller was like, well, make sure you're focused on rich results. But then Ryan Levering, who's a distinguished engineer from Google, who's responsible for structured data, commented on that same thread and said, over time, richer, correct semantics will favor more connected graphs. Semantics, and I'll say knowledge graphs, will be preferred. Thank you, Google. And then in a recent presentation by Fabrice Canal from Bing, when I was speaking at PubCon, when they were talking about what can SEOs do to really support and enable, the new Bing was what he was talking about. And he was said, write great content annotated with schema markup. And then he further then elaborated to say, use semantic markup to convey information about the page. They are talking about the need for us to identify relationships and connect them. And that's what we do with knowledge graphs. Okay, I've done enough talking. I'm going to hand it back over to all of you. Okay, so Mark, tell me, why do knowledge graphs matter? Why are they important?
Well, knowledge graphs, if you even just ask ChatGPT, you get a response like this. So the semantic search and analysis, helping search engines to contextualize your content, provide better search results to match user query. That's exactly what we've been talking about, and we've been doing this with schema markup for Google and Bing for years. The second one's around machine learning and artificial intelligence. So how do we help the algorithms to extract insights, make predictions, and support companies like Google in training their machines and AI bots? And the third one, knowledge graphs are important in the integration interoperability. So this is perhaps you can think of this as like marketing knowledge graphs or things in which you might be trying to combine other sources of data that aren't actually on the web in schema.org vocabulary. People are using it and extending the markup. You can use it for integration. Bringing things together in a knowledge graph gains a holistic view of the data and to identify the insights and share across the different applications. And what is really a kind of the foundational thing for machine learning and AI is the quality of data. So data scientists spend over half their time on data cleansing and getting the good data together, the data preparation and bringing it in so that it can train on that knowledge set. Knowledge graphs using a standard vocabulary like schema.org provides a basis for your machine learning on your web data. And this is in a vocabulary that is well understood. And so if you have that available, why wouldn't you use that to kind of train some of your algorithms? If you were to play like devil's advocate a little bit, you might say knowledge graphs aren't required to do machine learning, and you can bring data from other places, and that's for sure, that's true. But if you already have a standards-based vocabulary like schema.org, it can accelerate the time to getting to the clean data and getting the semantics that that you want to have in place and ready for
Mark,
machine
can I
learning.
just add something in here? I had the great opportunity to present at State of Search last night, and I talked about like there's an opportunity with this for SEO to be a bit of the hero because the work that you're doing also, by the way, to drive results, right, to drive clicks, is also then going to help your organization accelerate, I'll say their AI roadmap or their AI program. And so I always love the opportunity to make SEOs the hero, but like this is kind of exciting because it means that now like SEOs can raise their hand and say, I know you don't think SEOs, top of the mark, most important thing to get done. Well, let me tell you why, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that. But by the way, like SEOs are now so strategic in the AI place based on what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
All right, back to you.
Yeah, that's right. There's one of my favorite examples recently that Iram and I worked on was we were doing, Iram was creating a response for training of the algorithm. It came back with the response set, and the response set we actually formatted into a JSON LD. We're using context, we're using types, we're actually using the vocabulary for the storage of the machine learning tests so that it can go into our graph database, it can go back in a response, and it's actually using that same vocabulary. You kind of get this unambiguous result set that can be better understood by humans and machines. So it's like you're storing it back into a vocabulary that people know, and it's kind of readily accessible. Yeah, you can kind of glean from the context of the vocabulary. And I think what's kind of foundational is um, supporting a sort of like a generalized AI or a more ubiquitous AI. A knowledge graph can form this basis of that integrated data, not just in the raw data, but and also the derived concepts of the machine learning. Putting it back into a knowledge graph, you gain this kind of context of the ontology or the metadata that can really be kind of the backbone. So I think that's why knowledge graphs are so important as a kind of a foundational
All
tech.
right, let's bring the PhD in on this conversation. Iram, what else like are knowledge graphs important, especially like on the R&D side or things that
Uh,
you've explored?
if we consider, like we have discussed this, that incorporating knowledge graph into SEO is actually making it become more sophisticated and data driven, with a great emphasis on quality contents, user experience, and optimization. On the other hand, if we talk about the large language model, they can automate a certain aspect of semantic search or SEO, that could handle, for example, a keyword searching or automate data analysis, but it can't replace the creativity and the critical thinking that is required for this domain specifically. So if we see the future, overall generative AI and knowledge graphs together can enhance and augment the work of SEO to some extent to make it more productive and effective. But the field is still evolving and it needs a lot of maturity, I believe, before a mass market adoption.
Good news. Humans are still required, right? This is good news, right? As it evolves. Although there's a lot of acceleration in here, a lot of sort of evolution that we're talking about around knowledge graphs. And so my takeaway from both what you both said is actually one new kind of insight. So one is SEOs can be the hero by sort of creating this knowledge graph out of schema markup, but that the schema markup vocabulary can also be used, right? Sort of as because it's a well-defined vocabulary that you can use also in, I'll say like general machine learning sort of AI work. Did I capture that? I'm seeing nods from yes. Okay, thumbs up. Okay, cool.
Yep.
Wow. I'm sorry. I'm just letting it all sink in, right? I hadn't heard about them using the vocabulary sort of on a broader pace. I'm excited because there's a hypothesis that we've had, Mark and I, for a long time, that sort of like knowledge graphs, that marketing kind of level knowledge graph is sort of, that end game that we can then use like to do AI. And that it goes perhaps beyond your website, right? I think we're going to start hearing about sort of the need to integrate, lots of other kinds of data in it. But what's cool, I think, about where we're at on this journey is that we all have a starting point, right? We have a starting point where we can think beyond rich results for schema markup and start thinking about how it plays in this broader space. So, in summary, let's get the schema markup done so that you can then raise your hand and tell your organization and how it's going to accelerate. All right, so we're about to wrap up here. I will have a couple questions I'm ready with. So I want to just sort of let the audience know is that we are going to switch gears. I said, oh, look at that, right on time. 30-minute conversation followed by some good questions. So please put your questions in. Everyone asking about recordings, don't worry. We will send out recordings. You'll be able to access this so you can go back and re-listen and see what other nuggets that you can get. Key takeaways as we wrap this up. Again, I've already shared, implement schema markup. It's actually going to help you accelerate that building of a knowledge graph, especially if you do it right. We actually have quite a few resources on connected schema markup, how you do that. In fact, that's like actually what Schema App does. We also, start innovating, right? You're hearing, that's something that's really at the core of how we operate, but there's an opportunity for your organizations, across functionally to innovate on this stuff and where you in your role, if you are in the search team, can play a really strategic role. And then I think the thing Iram, you just shared is that it's evolving, right? This isn't totally brand new, but it's changing. And we need to be thinking in that sort of agile mentality about how do we kind of test, learn, and then sort of evolve sort of what we're thinking. Is that sort of like a good takeaway from what you had there? Okay. So there's a couple, keep those questions coming. I'm going to take just 3 more minutes. For those of you that don't know us at Schema App, I want to sort of just let you know who we are and what we do, and then we'll jump right into the question. So Schema App is an end-to-end scalable schema markup solution for enterprise SEO teams. And we really, really try to look at that whole process, right? Strategy all the way through measurable results. And we do that as a result of the amazing team that we have that both develops really scalable semantic technology that just gets the job done and allows you to measure those results. I see Jesse nodding because I know his team sort of relies on that sort of through their partnership with us. And then we match that with high touch support. And this is, Iram, to your play, like this is the people side, right? This is the people that allows us to live our mission around building meaningful connections, both in the data and with our customers and with the people. And we do this through our customer success team that really partners with your team. One, to kind of educate you, similar to what we've done today, sort of through today's conversation, but also sort of through kind of getting that markup there, managing it with you, reporting on it on a quarterly basis, and then again, making sure that you're getting results really fast after you choose to do work with us. And so we really try to throw 3 pieces of value. We're trying to do scalable schema markup, again, within the semantic connected way. We try to reduce IT dependency. Why? Because we want you to be agile. We want you to just get stuff done. And then finally, we're going to part you with experts. And I think by hearing both Mark and Iram, these are our senior team members guiding our product team to make sure that we're delivering everything that we can get done. Okay, that's a little bit about us. Jesse, anything you want to add on there? I know you kind of live and breathe with us.
Sounds great. Very accurate. We've had a wonderful experience with your team and you all at Schema App provided tremendous value. So we're very happy campers over here at Advent.
Amazing. Okay, let's jump into questions. We got some good ones. Okay, first one's from Mano. Simple question. How can we leverage schema for ChatGPT search? Who wants to jump in on that one? Mark, you talked a little bit about it. You want to kind of double click on it again?
Yeah. So at least in I'll say the interactive demos, you can go to that and take your schema markup and just ask the ChatGPT to read it, and then it'll come back and on at least in the version 3.5, It did an okay job, but it was kind of making up some other responses and data points. But on ChatGPT 4, you can just ask it to read a bunch of schema markup, and it'll then actually have that information to start responding to the natural language question. So that's in the interface, and there's limitations. So if you go, you can use that, you can bundle that into an API and start doing a larger data set. And so there's a nice way to kind of add the schema markup directly, and it understands the language. So it's actually pretty easy to do.
All right, here's a fun one. Maybe Iram, you can answer sort of some of what you're working on. Do you have any tools that integrate AI that can generate schema markup automatically? Do you guys want to talk a little bit about that, Mark and Iram?
Yes, we are working on that. There are some proof of concept, and we are running some of the processes in the staging environment right now, which is actually very good of auto schema generation. But we can't replace the human in the loop because sometimes those dot connections are missing, and we have to make the connection between the pages and making more sense out of data. So automated systems are great replacement of a recommender systems that can help and speed up the process. But right now we can't claim they're going to replace the humans in the from the loop and can be the standalone solution by themselves.
Yeah, the one of the other assets we've had for a couple of years is the linked entity recognition. And so this is taking parts of your content and trying to do a lookup and trying to find the entity that you're trying to describe in Wikidata or Wikipedia, sort of the same sort of references, the Google knowledge identifiers, and then also internally, like how do we bring that to be able to look up some of the content in your own knowledge graph and to kind of like key those ones out. So there's a linked entity recognition. But again, to Iram's point, there still needs to be this kind of control. And so we're working through how we provide whitelists or blacklists, or like how do you kind of like have maybe a control vocabulary. And so it's interesting. We can have high confidence in the matches, and which is what we do. But if we want to have a more generative kind of content, you need to kind of relax that, and then you want to have controls over it. So that's kind of one of the things that we have already and continue to work on.
Jesse, I have one for you. Thank you, Mark and Iram. Can you measure the effectiveness of your schema markup strategy, and maybe sort of generically, like what are some of the ways you measure it?
That was a question
Yeah,
for
like
me.
I was thinking it might be like I'm looking for a
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, we so yes, of course. And at ScheMap, you guys have done a tremendous job of giving us those QBRs, showing those improved metrics, right? So there was a question about FAQs, and we've seen a tremendous movement and successes therein. So absolutely, those are measurable results, and we've derived those benefits in working with you guys.
Yeah, it's one of the things I love in sort of overall SEO, that you can actually directly correlate it because they tell you the impressions and clicks for something, and then you can also look at click-through rate for when you achieve it and when you don't. So I think that sort of makes it easy. The other question Steve was asking with that one was like, how often does your schema markup need to be updated and attended to? The usual SEO answer, it depends. But like if you're an organization where things are changing, sometimes like some of that change is like layouts of page or new content, or again, if you're learning from the results, like how do you then go in and sort of, I'll say, get out the scalpel, keep on our healthcare piece, to make like some of those pages really perform better. And then the other thing that also happens is Google evolves sort of their recommendations specifically for rich results. And so actually just this week we noticed that product, now you can actually like display sort of who the audience is for that product. So maybe it's a girl's t-shirt, and so you can now sort of articulate sort of who that audience is. And so it is constantly changing. When you get into enterprise, there's lots of cooks in the kitchen, right? Lots of people sort of changing different things. And so it's a bit different than if you're more in like an SMB or a smaller, there's only one person publishing. In large organizations, people are publishing and frankly breaking and evolving things all the time. And so your schema markup needs to be managed with that. All right, I have another one, a devil's advocate question. Love these kind. So devil's advocate from David: will schema markup actually become less relevant as AIs become naturally better at understanding a page without it? Presumably the training of ChatGPT 3.5 was trained on content that was largely without schema markup. Mark, you want to take this one?
Yeah, just a sort of prognostication. The second part is easier. So presumably the training was trained on content that was already without schema markup. So they took I think the Common Crawl data set from 2021. So that's a data set from an organization that has all the web pages that it's crawled, and that's available for people to use. And so they use that, and that's why it's kind of had this date and time kind of web knowledge. And so that does have a lot of schema markup in that content. And so I think it has been like a part or a feature that was included in the training. And I only assume that last part because it understands the schema vocabulary. It understands like if I send it in some JSON-LD. And then the former parts, will schema actually become less relevant as AIs become naturally better understanding a page without it? Well, it assumes that that it's readily available. So the hard part is, or the expensive part is actually gaining access to the data set. And so even Google gives you a crawl budget, and a lot of it's in the JavaScript rendering, and that's expensive to try to acquire and to keep up to date. And so how are you supposed to send the kind of markup and that kind of data over to other consumers? Well, you might need other ways of accessing it, and you might just want to have a vocabulary or the data set from your schema markup to still answer that in just in a bulk
And
fashion.
I can't.
So I still think it's a necessary
I
part.
can't help but saying, but when you work with Schema app, you get a knowledge graph. You could actually like export the ontology. It's something that we do because of just how we build things. So, Iram, anything you want to add to that? Will it go away?
Sure. If we see the under the hood, like we are making the connection and sense out of the data. So if it doesn't matter if ChatGPT is just overpowering everything or SEO, we are passionate about making a connection by generating the knowledge graph. And if we dissect the chat gpt, it is based on deep learning, and deep learning itself is using graphs. So how they are connecting and making sense and inference and reasoning out of data, because under the hood they are using graph and mathematical concepts. So the graph is a data structure which is very strong. It doesn't matter if we are using it for the schema markup or training a machine learning algorithm. We are passionate about making those connection and sense out of data. So it can contribute either way if we are on the right track.
Thank you. Another question here on what happens if this one e-commerce system is using something like microdata for schema markup. Maybe I'll add to that. Like, could you generate a knowledge graph from that?
Sorry, Martha, microdata.
So, like, what if you have microdata? Will that help you build a knowledge graph?
Yeah. So any schema.org vocabulary like the RDFA or microdata or JSON-LD, we talk about JSON-LD because it's easy to integrate with. But yes, absolutely, you still get a graph out of that. A crawler like one that we have is it goes through the whole website, picks up all of the web pages, extracts the markup out of any one of those syntaxes, puts it into a graph database, so you can actually have that available in a couple of hours. So you can do that with other kinds of tools, but absolutely, it's still a graph. It's just sort of in a different syntax, and that's pretty easy to pick
All
up.
right, and we'll wrap up on my favorite question, which is how do I get started building my schema markup knowledge graph? Our contact information is on the screen. This is what we do every day, all day. And we are so excited that, again, not just to get you rich results and clicks, but there's now the opportunity to, again, make the SEO the hero in helping organizations really take that first step on that API, on that AI journey, sort of leveraging their knowledge graph that comes out of your hard work and that hard lift. Um, I just want to take a moment to say a big thank you to our active audience from all around the world asking amazing, fun questions. If you had questions that didn't get answered, we will be actually writing up an article about the webinar, and we'll try to address some of those questions there. What's the cost of schema markup? Give us a shout. Reach out to us on our website, and we can have that conversation. And then I want to also really thank our special guest, Jesse Meece from Advent Health. Thank you you so much for joining in the conversation and helping us understand how you're thinking about this in the customer journey. And then Dr. Iram and Mark, thanks for the insights and learning. Even I'm learning as we have this conversation and as we grow. Thanks, everyone. That's us from today. Thank you, and have a great day.